This is part 2 in my video series on Linux for developers. In this part we're going to talk about the installation. For a discussion on what is Linux and different distributions, desktop environment and so on, go check out the first part. I'm gonna do the installation in a virtual machine using a program called Boxes because it's already installed on my computer. So you'll likely have a Windows machine. So you don't have Boxes. Instead, you can use a thing called VirtualBox, which also allows you to create virtual machines where you can try out different operating systems. So you might want to try it out in a virtual machine before you commit and install it on actual physical hardware. Before we get started, I got a small disclaimer. This could potentially delete all files on your computer, making them inaccessible. So be very careful when installing. If you do it on real hardware, you can safely do it in a virtual machine, no problem. So if you install directly on your computer, make sure you got all your stuff backed up first. I won't be responsible for any data loss, so this is my warning. Also, if possible, if you got a spare computer or a spare hard drive, you might wanna try it on that first. It is technically possible to have Linux and Windows installed side by side on the same hard drive. Having multiple operating systems installed side by side is called dual booting. You'll get, when you start your computer, you'll get a menu where you can choose which operating system to boot into, sort of like shown here. Though it requires you to have a decent amount of free memory on the hard drive. And before you do that, you need to run disk defragmentation a bunch of times in Windows beforehand. That basically aligns all the different data blocks on your hard drive neatly, and then you need to resize the partition to free up space on the hard drive to create a new Linux partition. Though I would advise, if possible, to use a spare hard drive. I can't really show you the process of this defragmentation, but just search for it in your favorite search engine, and you get numerous guides on how to do it. So basically there's an application built in to Windows already, defragment and optimize disk drives, I think it's called, and then you select the storage device you want to disk defragment, and you click optimize, and then it takes a while. It can take quite a long time to complete, so have patience. And you also might want to do it a couple of times. First pass, it's really slow. Afterwards, it gets a lot faster. So this is a really good idea to do beforehand, before you resize your Windows partition to avoid data loss. After the defragmentation is done, you should shrink your Windows volume to make room for a new Linux partition. And you can do that with the disk management tool in Windows. So you just search for disk management, or you in control panel, I think you find the item that says create and format hard disk partitions. And you should get a window like what's shown here. You can select your Windows partition and shrink the volume. If you're serious about trying to use Linux, I think you should leave at least 100 GB for the Linux partition. You might go more. So if you have like 1 TB drive, which is common in many newer systems, you might want to do half and half, or whatever you can spare. Let's get started with the installation. First I'm gonna show you the installation process for EndeavourOS, because it has a graphical installer, so that makes it a bit simpler. Once you learn the concept, we can apply it to Arch, and it's sort of similar, though the installation script for Arch is a bit more limited. So go to EndeavourOS website, click download, and then choose one of the links. If you have a torrent client, you can use the torrent link here. It's plenty fast, or you can find a HTTP download somewhere down here. You want the ISO file, so grab that from a country near you, And yeah, wait for the download to finish. If you want to install your Linux directly on hardware, you need to create a bootable USB from the ISO, and you need a tool to do that. There are a bunch of tools out there. I found one that called Ventoy. I haven't used it yet, but it has a download both for Windows and for Linux, so you can use that on Windows too. I got Ventoy open and USB plugin in. It's a lecture USB flash drive thingy, so it detected it right out of the box. By the way, this application might look different on your operating system. I don't know how theming of this thing works. So I guess we just press install here. I haven't tried using it before, so let's try it out. The device will be formatted and all data will be lost. So yeah, if you have anything important on the USB, you better take a backup of that beforehand, because everything is gonna be gone. I've done that, so I'm just gonna click OK. Device will be formatted. Yeah, okay, cool. You successfully installed onto the device. Okay, cool. What can we do now? We should be able to install some operating systems on it. Okay, I guess maybe you just copy ISO files onto it. Let's try it. So here's the USB, and I got my download folder, and then let's try and copy it over. Copy is complete. So I guess I just inject the drive and then boot my computer into it. So I inserted the USB into the computer I want to install Linux on. For me to get to the boot menu, I had to press F12. It might be different depending on your manufacturer. But then I got the boot menu like this, and I choose USB, HT, with name of flash drive. That gave me a boot menu like this, where I could choose the ISO. So I selected the one I want to install, and it will give me installation. For the remainder of this video, I'm gonna show you how to do it in a virtual machine, because I don't have a video capture card. And I got boxes here, the thing I use to create virtual machines. If you're on VirtualBox, it looks a bit different, but the general idea is the same. So find a button that says create virtual machine, and then select as CD-ROM drive, you select the file you just downloaded. Now, ISO file is basically a direct byte copy of a disk, of an optical disk. You should get some options. The most interesting is for memory. So my machine here got 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I'm just using half of that. You can look in your task manager or whatever and see how much RAM you have available, and then pick something from that. And then, I don't know, I can't remember the exact size requirement, so it says 20 here, so I'm just gonna bump it up to 30, and that should be good enough. You can probably also select a kind of operating system in some drop down, and you might want to go with Linux 64-bit if possible, and then click create. So I had to lower my resolution a bunch just to make it easier to see. Anyway, when you start, you get a sort of screen like this. Yeah, just choose the default, that should be good enough. And then wait for it to boot up. It might take a while. Okay, we got the thing booted, and we see welcome window where you can choose start installer. Probably gonna change the resolution a bit first. So let's see, I'm running, yeah, set and quit. Yes, this should be good. Okay, nice. Yeah, so I talked about desktop environments in previous video. This, what we got here, is KDE. As I said, I like to use GNOME, but it doesn't matter, you can install both from the same installations. So if you just want to see what KDE looks like, here you go. Anyway, let's get to the installation. So click Start Installer, and we are online, so we do online. If you boot up from your computer, you might need to connect your computer with the Ethernet cable first. You can probably also do Wi-Fi, though that will take a bit to set up. And I think the difference between online and offline is that with the offline installation, you only get to choose it will just install with KDE, where with the online you get to choose different. So for some reason it decided that language should be Danish. I don't agree with that, so I'm gonna see if I can change it to US English. Okay, cool. I do live in Denmark though, so I want time zone to be Copenhagen, the capital, and keyboard, do whatever. I'm using US keyboard. And here we get the choice of desktop environments. It's pretty cool. It shows you a small screen. So KDE is basically, KDE Plasma is what we are in right now. Yeah. And we got some bunches of different options. This i3 VM, it's pretty advanced use. I wouldn't go with that. Choose one of the others that's more friendly. As I said, I like GNOME, so I'm gonna pick that. Then we got a bunch of different options. Let's see, I haven't done this in a while. So yeah, I'm guessing base installation should be fine. We got a firewall, some spell checking, Firefox as web browser, which is pretty cool. Some other stuff you may or may not need. I don't know. And base operating system, that's cool. We got all GNOME stuff. So yeah, let's do that. What bootloader to use? I'm just gonna leave default. So basically the process when booting up an operating system is that first your BIOS or UEFI loads, and it will look for a bootloader at a certain space on your hard drive. So it's basically a partition with a special flag set. That partition contains what is called the bootloader, which is a program responsible for booting or loading the operating system. So the screen I showed before, where you could select between Linux and Windows, that's basically what the bootloader creates. So yeah, we just leave it at default. Grab's fine. Then here, this is where we need to be careful, especially if you have Windows already installed on a hard drive, and that's why I strongly advise you to use a separate hard drive, because you got the potential to basically delete everything on your computer. If you have Windows already and you shrunk the partition as shown earlier, then you get to choose replace partition. And then you can down here select the free space you left after shrinking the partition. For the EFI system partition, that is basically gonna be the boot partition. It's most likely gonna be a FAT32 partition as the first partition on your hard drive. Basically, the option I'm gonna go with here, because it's a virtual machine, it doesn't have anything on it, is erase the entire disk. Then you get an option for swap partition. So swap is basically used for hibernation and when your file is running out of RAM, your system is using all the RAM, then it can augment that slower, but avoid stalling or crashing by storing the extra data on somewhere else, so on the hard drive in a swap partition. You got different options. You can create a separate swap partition, which is probably gonna be faster. It allows, it's useful for hibernation, so when you shut the lid on your laptop or suspend your computer, then it will store everything in memory to the swap partition, and then it can load that up from that and be where you started. So sort of like suspend or hibernation works usually. Also get the choice to swap on a file on the file system. That's kind of like how Windows works. It uses a swap to a file. I don't know, I tend to go with its own swap partition. So generally it will allocate as many gigabytes as you have memory, because if it needs to hibernate, then you could potentially, if I have 8 gigabytes of RAM, it needs to store 8 gigabytes somewhere. Yeah, nah, no, for this we'll just go with swap on file. I don't really care, because it's just a virtual machine. Having separate swap partition can have some advantages. Anyway, enter a bunch of details. So we're just gonna write in test for everything. Use same password as administrator account. If you're the only one using the computer, I will suggest you leave this on. Often when installing stuff or doing system configuration, you will be asked for your root password. So that means basically you enter the same password as for your user account. You can also get it to log in automatically. I don't know. We'll go with this and then hit install and install. And it takes a while for it to complete. So the installation is complete. And yeah, we're just gonna reboot. You might need to remove the installation media after the virtual machine has been shut down. I don't know. I don't remember if it does that automatically. But yeah, start up the virtual machine again and yes, okay. So if we leave the ISO connected to the virtual machine, we get a boot menu where we can choose boot existing OS. So we're gonna do that. That leaves us with the bootloader of the EndeavourOS we just installed. Select the default option and we'll boot from the installed version. We get a login screen, type in the same password as before. And now we have a GNOME desktop. So generally what you do is you hit your Windows button and then you get a bar down here. You can hit it again to make it go away, and then you can click on show apps and it will show all the applications you have installed. You either click on applications individually or you can drag them to the desktop to open. Or if you just hit Windows and type anything, you can search for applications and files and other stuff. It's a bit laggy here. It's gonna be a lot smoother when you run it on real hardware. And also if you're on VirtualBox, there's something called guest editions you can install to make it a lot smoother too. Yeah, it's a good idea to take a look around and see what you find. I have a separate video where I will go into details on how to customize this. Yeah, basically installing EndeavourOS, not too difficult. Okay, now let's try the installation with plain Arch Linux. If you go to the Arch Linux page, just search on it. It's archlinux.org. You click download, and here we got a torrent link that you can use to download somewhere. There should also be a direct HTTP. Yeah, here a direct HTTP download link to the ISO file. Already got the ISO downloaded, so I'm basically just gonna install, download, and then choose the Arch Linux ISO. I had to lower the resolution a bunch, so that's why it looks a bit blurry. Basically it's because the text during the installation would otherwise be really small and difficult to read. Anyway, for the settings, I'm gonna go with UEFI because that's how modern systems boot. And then I'm gonna allocate 8 gigabytes again. I got 16 on computer, so that's half. And then I don't know, with stories, I'm just gonna leave it at 30. That should be plenty. Click create and it should boot up into the ISO we just downloaded. Select the default. Okay, so we actually fully booted from the installation medium now. It doesn't look like much. We just have a terminal. Here we have an installation script called Arch install, which we might use to install Arch. We get this text-based menu that allows us to configure certain things. Let's go through the options. Mirrors, we can leave that alone. Locals is if you want to change your keyboard layout, you can do it from here. You can also change your local settings, so that's stuff like how language is shown and so on. I'm just gonna leave it as default. US is fine for me. Bootloader. We get multiple choices. System deboot is the default. That's probably good enough for most cases. If you're gonna do dual boot, you need to check the instructions on Arch Linux website, and then I'm guessing drop would be the way to go. Anyway, we leave it a default. Swap true. That sounds fine. We change host name to something else if we want. User account is something we definitely want. So type in a username and then type in a password. Yeah, I know it's weak. It's just a virtual machine, so I'm just typing in something to test it. Password did not match. Okay, let's try it again. Should user be super user? You likely want that because that means that when you need to do administrative tasks after the installation, you can just type in your normal user password and then authenticate for that. So when you install stuff, you are gonna be asked for a password and you type your user password again. So we will leave that. That sounds good. Confirm and exit. Okay. Then next thing is profile. We select type and we want a desktop. Got different choices. We want desktop because we'll use it as development machine. So we select that. Then we get a choice of a lot of different desktop environments. And I'm gonna pick GNOME here. Then we go back again. Guess that should be set. Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. So I had to press enter actually. So graphics driver. For if you have Intel or AMD, I guess it pretty much works out of the box with the open source driver. If you have NVIDIA, they only really have proprietary driver that works well. So you probably need to do some changes in here for that. I'm gonna go with the open source. Because that should work well for me. We go back. Then we get next item is audio. We get two options here. There's multiple ways of doing anything pretty much in Linux. We got Pipewire, which is the newer thing. But we can also choose Pulse Audio. Pulse Audio is being outphased, so Pipewire should be the way to go. Kernels, leave it as default. For network configuration, we are gonna use Network Manager because that makes it easy to configure from graphical environment from GNOME or KDE Plasma, which we choose GNOME. I'm guessing that's about it. Oh yeah, we missed disk partitioning. So we'll go up here, partition disk. I'm gonna use best effort, which is pretty much gonna remove everything. Since I only intend to use this. Since it's only a virtual machine, I can safely do that. But be very careful with this if you're actually installing on a real hard drive, especially if you have different things you want to keep on that hard drive. This is the layout I will go with if you already have Windows installed on your computer and you want to install your Linux alongside, it kind of assumes that you already shrunk the Windows partition to leave up free space for Linux partition. So basically you create a new partition in the empty space. You set the file system type to ext4 and the mount point to /. Then you need a boot partition also. There's already gonna be a boot partition on your computer that is FAT32 formatted. It's likely the first partition on the hard drive. So you assign that to the mount point /boot. You shouldn't format this partition, just set a mount point for it. Then confirm and exit, and you can continue with the installation. I'm gonna choose the hard drive device. So I said 30, I guess it made it 32 gigabytes. It's called virtual block device. Might be called something else on your machine, SDA something or MMB blah something. Anyway, I'm gonna go with ext4, which is sort of the default file system for Linux. And then it basically shows me what it intends to create. And I think that looks pretty good. So yeah, we're just gonna leave it with that. And hopefully, yes, we can now install. Cool. It prints out and then it starts formatting. Install all the packages. To both boot the system on for the desktop environment. This might take a while. So basically it's asking us now if we want to do any additional configuration within the installation we just made before we reboot. And no, we don't want that. We should be good enough. We should be possible for us to reboot. So I'm gonna type in reboot. And now we see the bootloader from our newly installed Arch Linux system. So we choose the default Arch Linux. And we are now presented with a graphical environment. I changed my resolution back to normal. So yeah, we got less blur. Anyway, let me log in. I don't want to take it through. So here we got the basic graphical environment. Pretty much like we had before with Endeavour. We should probably change the resolution to something a bit higher to kind of fit the screen. What would be good? Maybe this one. Yeah, that looks about all right. So this is pretty much a stock GNOME installation without any customizations. Yeah, okay, I can see we do even have a couple of extra apps. We got Vim and HTOP. Anyway, we'll maybe look at that later on. Anyway, you can start using your new Linux installation now. In later videos, I'll show you some cool stuff you can do with it. But that's it for this time.